Hey guys, Sloma02. I kind of want to do a quick segment on broken decks and broken cards in general, and tie it back into, well, one, why I think fair magic is good, and actually what is fair magic. So the deck you have in front of you is a freeform deck. It's not even legal anymore. It's actually a variant of this deck because I put this one together. I didn't net deck it. Is what got Flash banned in Legacy, restricted in Vintage. And this is essentially Flash Hulk, or Hulk Flash, whatever you want to fucking call it. But Hulk Flash, essentially how this deck works is it has a turn 0 capability off of Gemstone Caverns. Gemstone Caverns, legendary land. If you start off on the draw, then you can put this into play, exiling a card out of your hand. And it makes mana of any color. And you put this into play, utilize one of your Simian Spirit Guides or Elvish Spirit Guides to cast a flash in a Protean Hulk. If you don't have a Protean Hulk, then you utilize one of the 4 Summoners packs to find a Protean Hulk. The Protean Hulk dies, you get 6 power, or 6 CMC worth of critters, which is going to be this pile right here, Carrion Feeder through Disciple of the Vault, and all of the other 0 mana artifact creatures that are in the deck that allow you to either sack them or instantly have them die, the X spells, upon entering, causing Disciple of the Vault to do 1 damage per creature that dies. So this pile right here of 8 is actually just enough on its own, but you have more over here. You can even further supplement this deck with like Demonic Tutors and Mystical Tutors to make it truly, even more broken. So I want to showcase this deck for a moment and then tie it back into an experience I had recently with broken magic. So this is my opening hand on turn 1. I'm certainly going to keep this because it does have turn 1 potential. The one issue that this hand does run into is it does not have backup for its Protean Hulk in the form of Pact of Negation. So the way this hand would play out is quite simple. You'd exile the Simian Spirit Guide, utilize the island to cast Flash in the Protean Hulk would die. Once Protean Hulk had died, what you would end up finding is everything in the deck. Well, with the exception of the guides. You don't really want to find the guides. So you would click through all of this nonsense right here. And I don't even think we need to do all of it because each of these creatures that are going to die on their own will constitute 4 damage apiece. So even just this should be good enough, but I'll go ahead and go through the whole combo here. Just in case somehow my opponent was able to gain 100 life or so on turn 0. So these are all the cards that we would want, and we would say okay. And then as you can see, there's a stack a mile long of Disciple triggers here that are likely more than enough to kill. And then you have the fun of stacking this whole nonsense. And as you can see, this is a very easy turn 1 kill. If we were on the draw, we would not have had the turn 0 kill, so you didn't have the Gemstone Cavern in hand. But this is exceedingly fast. This kind of magic is sort of asinine to me, and I want to kind of tie this back to another game that I saw today. So this is Proto Hulk, or Flash Hulk. I call it Proto Hulk because it's not even a legal deck. It's very close to being a proto deck, The only way we could probably make this faster is by violating the rule of 4 of, but, as you can tell, this deck is just disgusting. This is why it got banned in Legacy and in Vintage, because it was just too much, and it was unsettling for the format, to say the least. So I'm not going to run through that entire thing. What I want to jump into is another game that I played today, and I was playing against, I believe, this player. Yeah, so this is the 3rd game I played against this player. I believe I played Sneak and Show against them and won, played Death and Taxes against them and lost, and then played this 4-color check pile deck in Legacy format. So I'm a huge proponent of 2 of the cards in my hand being the most fair cards in Magic, Wasteland and Force of Will. I think Wasteland's even more fair than Rishadan Port, although Rishadan Port is more difficult to use in a wide range of decks. I believe it actually is slightly higher upside in the right deck that the deck it needs to go into. So I'll go through this matchup. So my opponent's playing Charbelcher. Charbelcher is a very high percent turn 1 deck in goldfishing. The problem with Charbelcher is it cannot really beat a Force of Will, especially if someone's tuned it for extreme speed. So opponent plays a Bayou land grants, finding land grants for a Bayou, and shows us their hand. So we know their hand is Manamorphose, Elvish Spirit Guide, Empty the Warrens, Rite of Flame, an additional land grant, and Cabal Ritual. So this hand actually doesn't have me that scared, because if my opponent goes for an all-in, Empty the Warrens in the first turn, I'll wait until they cast their last mana-producing spell, Force of Will it, and essentially turn Force of Will into a 5-for-1. And because they don't run card draw in their deck, they will be forced to slowly draw back up to the required pieces of their puzzle to cast and Empty the Warrens for a significant amount enough of mana to actually win the game. So they cast their land grant, find their Taiga, I assume their 2-land Belcher. They cast out a Manamorphose after exiling their Simian Spirit Guide, cast Rite of Flame, and then cast Cabal Ritual. At this point, they're down to 3 cards, and they just auto-concede right there. So, I guess what I wanted to get after is, don't play Broken Magic. Like, to me, why does Charbelcher, why does Goblin Belcher never win tournaments? Is it brought to tournaments? Yeah, some madmen probably bring it to tournaments, or madwomen. But is it good? No. I mean, it's fine for beating up on folks in the Just for Fun room, or beating up on folks if you're a sadist. It's your FNM, I guess. But the deck itself's not even that good. And the reason why is because you have cards like Force Will, cards like Wasteland that stop stuff like Tolarian Academy, stop stuff like, Mishra's Workshop, Bazaar of Baghdad, even the Soul Lands. Blood Moon would be another example. I think Blood Moon is an exemplar of being a fair card, even though a lot of people hate on it. Chalice, a little less so. But I kind of wanted to showcase this because I think, you see these sort of decks, and these kind of decks are not good, people. Like, they're not really good decks because they are so exceedingly narrow. They limit you as a pilot to opening the cards you exactly need to win. Their pathway is so narrow that they can't play any game other than the game they were designed to play. And that's why I have always been and will always be an exemplar for the fair decks, because there is decision-making and interaction that needs to happen over, that is not even intuitive as to where you need to interact all the time. And you as a pilot need to become as skillful or intuitive in where you choose to do that. In this case, I didn't have to be that intuitive because my opponent cast a land grant, which means I know your hand, brother. If I have Force of Will, I'm going to win because I'm just going to counter at the right time and stop you. Now, albeit I would have countered there regardless, because I know once that Cabal Ritual comes off the stack, he's going to have 4 mana with 1 red and 3 black, which means that Empty the Warrens is very viable at that point, or Charbelcher into LED. Charbelcher into LED, I'd rather wait for the Belcher, but I'm probably not going to take the risk there and just force their mana down, especially on 3 cards. So I guess I just wanted to give this quick piece. A lot of folks actually hate on Force of Will as well, hate on Wasteland, think they're too OP. They are powerful cards. But at the end of the day, I think they are actually what keeps the boogeymen away in most formats. When you start looking at Legacy, you look at Vintage, you basically have the Force of Will decks, the big blue decks, or any of the blue decks. That could be Oath, that could be Tinker, Bot, Doc deck, that could be, Mentor. They're all Force of Will decks. You have the Shops decks, many varieties from Stacks to, I'm trying to think. The Kodotha Forge Master style decks, the Ravager shops. I've even seen Affinity shops where they ran like Skull Clamp. And then you have your Bazaar Baghdad decks, which right now there's a popular tear for the Survival Bazaar deck. And then Dredge has kind of been habitual boogeyman, and historically I guess World Gorger Dragon to some extent, or Reanimator. But those are kind of the 3 pillars, and I think Force of Will has stood the test of time, and despite the hate that it gets, and despite the hate Wasteland gets, these are cards that keep nonsense like this, or the garbage I just showed you, the Proto-Hulk deck, at bay. What does that Proto-Hulk deck do if it gets Force of Will when I'm doing that? Well, it better hope it has a Pact of Negation, otherwise it's just done. Better hope the other player doesn't have Stifle to stifle the death trigger on the Protean Hulk, because then you're going to lose, right? So I don't know. I wanted to do this quick piece because, I think there's good combo decks and there's bad combo decks. Like, I look at this kind of style of combo deck that my opponent's playing, or the one that I just put together. I don't see them as being good combo. They're not good for the game, and they're really not that great either. They're very powerful, but they're narrow. The deck itself is powerful. They don't allow you as a player to really play a great game of Magic. You know, I think at one point there was a player who was lap piling his opening hand for, Amulet Bloom. That deck's a lot more consistent than these are, and it's not even like, that consistent. I mean, it still has its inconsistencies, such that a player had to, put an opening draw of 7 in his lap to get to a high place in tournament finishes a couple years back. So I guess what I want to get after is there's good combo, there's bad combo. Don't sell yourself short and play decks like this. One, they don't win tournaments because they're not good. Like, they will eventually crap out on you. You'll have a mulligan to 5 and you'll never win. And sometimes you'll have these kind of openers. But at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, like, are you getting better at Magic? And are you really playing a game of Magic? Are you playing a sub-game? I don't get upset when I have to play these decks, but, I do kind of get upset when I just force of will and the game's over. Like, that's just that. And it's like, okay, dude, well, you're just basically running around doing a force of will check on decks. But at the same time, I also want to do it because I do think this card, Force of Will, gets a lot of flack, especially the ugly art version that I'm running right here. And I think most of it's much undeserved. I think, the malignment that some people have for it is completely unwarranted, probably uneducated as well. But I think if you play in Eternal formats long enough, you'll see stuff like this where you're just like, all right, dude, like, cool deck, cool opener. Like, yeah, you'd have like 30 goblins right now, or let's be realistic, he'd have 14 goblins, which is a 2-turn clock. But it's not consistent enough that it's worth running, and it doesn't have interaction. Like, you don't have Cabal Therapies in there, you don't have Force of Wills, you don't have Pact of Negations. And even Pact of Negations is kind of narrow because, let's say, something goes wrong, you're never going to pay for that. Like, let's say my first land I played was, Scrub Land, and then I played a Bayou, and I just cast Zealous Persecution. Then, you can't pay for that, right? Or at this point, even then, like, Pact of Negation has to be... He couldn't even Pact of Negation here because he couldn't kill me in one turn, so he had to pay for it on the following turn, which would require multiple Lion's Eye Diamonds. So, I don't know. I guess I wanted to do this real fast. I've been seeing a few more of these style of decks, and I don't know. Like, I don't think... This is certainly a way Magic can be played, but I look at it as akin to, like, flipping a coin to determine if you're going to win or not. If you have a bad opponent who doesn't know how to use their deck and doesn't have ways to answer this stuff, yeah, you may win sometimes. But if they know what they're doing, they have, interaction for this style of thing, i.e. Force of Will, they're going to get you. Like, why play it? It just, on a long enough time scale, your own deck will beat you because it only does one thing really well. And if the pieces do not align, or you have to mulligan down to where you don't have them, you're going to lose. And to me, that's just not Magic. Hurrah, raise our fists in the air for fair Magic. I hope you guys enjoyed this small segment on what I consider to be fair Magic and what I consider to be busted. And, what I consider to be, I think, good for the game or healthy for the game. And, that's it for this piece. Kind of more of a rant/informational piece on the game itself and why we play, how we should seek to play, and then how we get better at playing, because I don't think it's by playing nonsense like this. I think you need to play some more deep-seated games that require you to think of where you need to interact over the course of it in order to figure out your line, determine your line for victory. But to each their own. Some folks enjoy this kind of thing, and it is kind of cool to see when it goes off, but, let's get real. Over a long enough time horizon, it goes off a lot less than it goes right? Alright, guys, enjoy, and take care now.